Sup, you've reached Clarissa. I'm out somewhere being da bomb and can't answer. My bad. Leave me your name, number, and a sweet message, and I'll hit you up later. Peace.
Hey, it's Amelia.
And Sherrick.
You told us to call and let you know what we're doing.
Weird, we get your voicemail almost every week at this point.
Oh well, I guess we'll leave you a message about what we're up to and our pop culture thoughts of the week, and hopefully we'll hear back from you soon.
It's almost like we have a podcast that spends 45 minutes picking songs for a 15-minute run.
I feel personally attacked.
So this may be strange, but my walk slash I'll say I typically don't go for a run, but I will take my dog out for an extended walk. I try to hit around 30 minutes or so. But 9 times out of 10, my walk playlist is really just who's streaming on Twitch right now.
Oh, gotcha.
Or if there isn't anybody that I want to listen to that's streaming on Twitch, then I will find one of my favorite YouTubers' most recent videos. And if it's 30 minutes or more, it's on. That's I typically don't listen to or failing that, a podcast episode that I'm missing, because usually those are going to be at least an hour, and so I will get through that, and then I'll queue it up for the rest for a car ride.
Mm-hmm.
But 9 times out of 10, that just works out. But I don't really go back and listen to music or anything like that. And I think for me, it's because of it feel listening to a conversation happening or someone playing a game or whatever helps me stay engaged with the outside. Where if someone is because I'm not usually if I'm listening to music, I'm kind of turn my brain off a little bit. So if I'm listening to a conversation, I can be aware, there's a dog across the street. I need to make sure that we don't just stumble into having a cross path situation. Or what I have and not that Stephanie isn't aware of it, but Blue is
Uh-huh.
such a quick I found this thing, I'm gonna eat it, that we have to watch her during walks, because if you're not careful, you'll just be I don't know what that was, all I see is you were smacking your lips you just ate something, because you did.
Yeah I mean, I will say I don't go for runs. But just the idea of spending way more time trying to decide what to listen to or watch than the activity is, that's totally me. Because I like to listen to music more when I'm doing chores or something like that it's I just need something to get me going. And I think sometimes upbeat music helps with that.
Sure.
But yeah, no, when I would work out back in the day, music didn't make the time go faster. I needed a show or something, or a podcast or a book or something with a narrative or some way that helped time pass faster than just random songs playing or whatever. Yeah. I've started trying to go on a walk every day. It's been about a week, and I've gone most days. Some days it's just around the block, but it's at least getting outside. But I'll put a YouTube meditation on or something. Something that just is supposed to keep your focus on the moment and whatever. Because otherwise I'll get lost in what I'm listening to and not hear anything else in the world around me.
Yeah. Now, you want to know something that is interesting is that when I am driving, though, I have a harder time with I usually get to a point where listening to a podcast and listening to people talk, it actually does the opposite effect and lulls me a little bit. So then I have to listen to music that I know the lyrics to, because that somehow keeps me awake, and I'm mostly talking about later night driving, because every once in a while I'll have to drive back and forth from a rehearsal or doing a show or whatever, and you know which drive I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about without me saying like out and out, but
Yeah.
like
Mm-hmm.
those kind of drives, especially like super late, I'm just like, ah man, I have to listen to music because
Mm-hmm.
like then I will like at least be focused on the lyrics and knowing the lyrics, reciting those lyrics, even singing them out loud will keep me awake rather than listening to like a funny podcast, which like I'm laughing, but like I also feel like I'm starting to kind of get lulled a little bit. So
Mm-hmm. It really depends on mood, and that's a lot of it for me is that I'm like, I don't know what mood I'm feeling, and I like
mm-hmm.
look at options and be like, no, I
Not
want the
these.
mood of this. I want the mood of this song,
Mm-hmm.
but something I haven't listened to 1,000 times, but something that isn't brand new.
Yeah. It just gets a very, very granular, for lack of better words.
Yeah. Yeah.
Meanwhile, while we were having this conversation before I hit the record button, I was telling Amelia about how like I'm really bad with certain emails in the sense that I will look at the email and go cool, or at least look at the headline and go cool, and then I just won't like interact with the email. And I'm not talking
Uh-huh.
about like before anybody gets like anyone that's listening gets like tense. I'm not talking about an email you sent me where it's like, hey, what about this or what about that, or like I'm not talking about an email in which like my attention is required. I'm talking about like a promotional email. It's like, hey, like this thing is coming soon. Do you want to like buy it maybe? I'm talking about those
Mm-hmm.
kinds of emails. And as a result, my promotions folder in my Gmail was in like the 2300s of unread, like, and is now to 1957. So I'm deleting a bunch. But,
Mm-hmm.
and Amelia was like, no, stop. And I was like, you're right, but like also, but I don't want to.
Well, I didn't tell you to stop deleting them. I'm
No,
just
no, no,
telling
no, no,
you
no. You
not to
told me to
let
start.
your email get
Yes,
like that.
yes.
Yeah, I was saying that like when I have like 10 emails in my inbox, I feel overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll keep things in my inbox until I'm done with them.
Yeah.
And then it sometimes becomes overwhelming. And so, yeah, I was saying I created a folder in my email called To Read and one called Response Needed.
Mm-hmm.
And I will sort emails into those folders to get through everything in my inbox.
Right.
And then, like, delete everything that doesn't have to go in one of those two or somewhere else if I have a folder that it needs to be saved for some other reason. But yeah, and then I will like go back to the response needed and be like, okay, when do I need to respond to these? And if
Mm-hmm.
it's like now, just like try to get it done now. um, and then, yeah, To Read, it's like, yeah, it's like advertisements or somebody's email marketing newsletter or like, um, like, I don't know. I feel like I get updates that I do want to read, or newsletters that I do want to read usually.
Mm-hmm.
But if I go into that To Read folder and there's 2 months worth of somebody's newsletter in there, then it's like maybe I don't actually care enough to read that person's newsletter. So maybe I
Mm-hmm.
should just unsubscribe and delete them all.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, this thing has been in To Be Read for 4 months or 5 weeks or whatever.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Am I really going to read it? Is it really that important? Yeah. Because again, like, yeah, and I was saying to Sherrick that like the more promotional emails I would sign up for and get, the more it would just encourage me to buy stuff that I probably didn't need to buy.
Right.
And because it would be like, oh, this clothing store has a sale going on right now. And I'd be like, ooh, I should get some stuff since they're on sale right now. Well, stores have sales on and off all the time. So it's like,
True.
not everyone is like, that's how they get you. Sales people know that if there's a sale and something's for a limited time, our brains are like, ooh, we gotta get it, because otherwise we'll miss out.
Right.
And it's like, I probably didn't need clothes just because they were on sale. Instead, I'll wait till my jeans all wear out and I have absolutely none left and need to go shopping, and then be like, oh, there's a sale coming up.
That's totally
and
fair.
look for it. So yeah, so that's me. Unsubscribe from everything that you don't want. It's peaceful. It's calm.
It's definitely one of those things for sure. Sorry, as Amelia was doing that sermon, I was just like, and I'm removing myself from this list and from this list, and great. I've absolutely abandoned like old email addresses, mostly because I was just like, either I signed up for something or someone signed me up for it, and now it's just like I'm just like, nope, I just don't use that email address anymore. Like, to put my shame out for reals, no one's gonna know that I had this email address, but once upon a time I owned, I think it was phenomenaltjjones@hotmail.com, and that is such like, I don't even remember. I think I got reminded because a scammy site called Number One Music was like, hey, you listed my current email address as your backup email address for this phenomenaltjjones@hotmail.com. And I was like, oh God, I don't even fucking remember what the password could be for that. That was like way before I got a password manager. So that shit's gone, baby. Like, somebody hopefully from 12 years ago wasn't trying to reach me via that email exclusively, because I have stopped looking at it so long ago. But yeah,
the thing is that if that's how somebody was trying to find you, then they're really bad at finding you. Because, like, I'm pretty sure I could Google either one of us and find us immediately.
Yeah, that's a thing that like I struggle with, for better or for worse, and we can get into this another time, but like, part of me like enjoy, and we've talked about like offline about like the uniqueness of a name, and how like the name that I was going to choose for myself before my wife and I got married was going to be generally a pretty unremarkable name. Like, it wasn't like super gentrified, but like you would be kind of hard pressed to find me in it, if that makes sense. And then, between just various people responding to it, and I won't get into whether it was positive or negative or not, but like ultimately like didn't really have much of a choice because of the way that equity works. And by equity, I mean like actors equity. It was kind of like, well, you're already Sherrick in the system, so we're not changing that. And I was like, well, then the decision, I guess, has been fully made for me. So, um, but yeah, that being said, y'all didn't really come to this voicemail / podcast / voicemail disguised as a voicemail for that particular information. You came because you wanted to hear us yap about pop culture stuff. And so we're doing it. So we are talking about Animorphs once again. So rejoice if you were here, wanted that to come back, because it's back, baby. Your wish has been granted. Your other two wishes don't count. So today, if I recall correctly, and I hope that if I've gotten the order correct, because that's the research that I did, we're talking about Animorphs episode book number 40, which is called The Other, and we're talking about 41 called The Familiar. And I'm just going to say this up front. This is probably going to be the most difficult time that I will have thus far talking about Animorphs. I won't say why yet. I'm just going to say that this is probably going to be the hardest episode re-Animorphs to do.
Okay.
So, episode 40 or book 40, because I'm gonna keep doing that, is once again called The Other. This is one of the books that was out during the time in which Animorphs was on TV. So it has the lovely little watch Animorphs on TV, which that may be a thing that we do sometime if I can find where all the episodes are at, because I think it would be very interesting to go back and kind of talk about / go over how the book handled things versus how the TV show handled things.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because they are very different. But this one is Marco turning into a bee, like you do.
Okay.
And the book description is called Axe and the Animorphs Find New Hope When They Learn That Axe is not the only non-infected Andalite on Earth.
Okay.
So that is the book description when you kind of look at the back there. Feel free to let me know if you feel like you need a primer for more or less of what has gone down. It'll be hard to do, but we can do it. It has been quite a while since we have talked about, Prince Jake. Don't call me Prince Jake and the crew.
Okay, yeah. We'll see as you talk about it.
Yeah.
If I have questions, I'll try to ask them.
Yeah.
Like I remember the basics, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to see.
Yeah. So for the uninitiated, or for some reason you insist on listening to this episode in its full runtime before the other Animorphs, the ones in which there are not 40. They're not 40 because we cover 2 to 3 books per episode.
Yeah.
But
that's still a lot. Yeah.
Still a lot to go back and listen to. But or if you just particularly are like, hell yeah, I remember this book. Can't wait to hear Sherrick talk about it. Marco, Cassie, Rachel, Tobias, Jake, and their Andalite friend Axe are essentially child soldiers stopping a high-scale, high-tech, full-on alien body-snatching invasion of Earth. There are these lovely, and I use that word extremely loosely, creatures called Yeerks, who look like giant sea slugs, and they burrow into your brain, and once they do, they connect to your brain like a Wikipedia article, and then they know everything about you. And they know how to behave like you. They know what you would say. They know how you would say it and when you would say it. It essentially makes a perfect... there is no real good tell generally of a person that is controlled, or called a controller, by a Yeerk and your average run-of-the-mill person, which makes the Animorphs' job extremely hard, because people that they don't know are controllers, unless they know or see them interacting with people and using certain terminology / being in certain places, they got to kind of assume that they are a controller. So there's that. This book is a Marco narrated book, so we'll talk a little bit about that. Marco happens to be having a rare free evening. He does not have really anything to do. There's not really a mission going down, so he is chilling at home, and he sees a strange video clip on the news. If you are familiar with the early to mid 90s, whenever like unexplained phenomena would happen, you'd get that really blurry photo of Bigfoot or whatever. It's like,
yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Perfect.
I wasn't sure where that was going. So I was like waiting, and then you said it, and I was like, I know exactly what picture you're talking about.
Yep. So we get that, but it is obvious to Marco what it is. This is a picture of an Andalite on the news.
Got it. So it's like, shit.
Yeah. For the uninitiated, Andalites are the quote unquote good aliens that are that have helped the Animorphs via at least one of them, giving the Animorphs the ability to morph. But generally, the hope is kind of like, we need to hold off the Yeerks until the Andalites come to this solar system, and then they'll show them what for or whatever. But also that hasn't really happened. Anyway, so Marco is like oh shit, somebody saw Axe. This is bad. And he also astutely observes that if this clip is on the news, a bunch of controllers probably are aware of it and are probably like, oh, good. Now we have cornered the Andalite bandits, as they call them. So Marco chooses his bird morph to go find where Axe and Tobias are because they hang out together. They're essentially best friends in a meadow. And
they're essentially best friends in a meadow.
Yeah.
No,
they're also best friends out of a meadow, but that's neither here nor there.
It's just the way that you said it. My brain took a second to figure out where the comma goes.
That is totally fair. So they get Marco gets to the meadow, shows Axe uses his fucking crazy, because this is an era in which there aren't just like smartphones, but he uses his innate knowledge of tech to basically just like view the news on something. And he sees the clip and he goes, this is not me. This is an entirely different Andalite, and it's missing the last half of its tail. So to remind our lovely viewers and Amelia of what Andalite physiology is like, think of like a centaur with extra like eyes on the top of its head that emerge from stalks. And also they have these long tails that end in this very sharp hooked blade called a tail blade. I don't know what the Andalite like name for it is, so that's what it is. So Axe is basically saying that this particular Andalite does not have that last half of the tail with the tail blade. So Tobias happens to look at this and goes, with my red-tailed hawk eyes, actually not eagle eyes because that's offensive, my red-tailed hawk eyes, I know where this is at. So or at least I have a pretty good guess. So all three of them basically, well, two of them morph. Tobias doesn't need to go check it out. Once they get there, Marco starts to demorph, but to check it out. But he kind of like looks to the left, and a possum that is just hanging out also starts to demorph.
Uh-oh.
And they find themselves confronted with a very adult Andalite, which is not the one that was in the footage, because he has his tail blade.
So now there's more. Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
Tobias gets smacked around a little bit. There are angry words exchanged, and the large Andalite basically is like, hey, yo, get out of here. You're on my lawn, get off my lawn kind of thing.
Got it.
And they do, but then they go, all right, but we're going to track you, fool, because obviously you're not the one that we were looking for. So this Andalite escapes, and they watch him morph into a human and enter this house in the suburbs. And they go, instead of confronting him further, let's get the rest of the team involved, because there's a Rachel, there's a Cassie, and there's a Jake that are not involved in this situation.
Right.
Once they regroup, Axe basically reports that he's heard of these two Andalites that are stranded on Earth, and he says the large one is named Galfinilan. Well, I'm going to call him Gaff for short.
Okay.
And the injured one is called Myrtil. Now, I'm going to warn you, there's a lot of ableism in this book.
Got it.
If you decide to go read it for yourself, I should have said that at the top. I apologize, but just know that this book has a lot of ableism in it, and it comes from Axe.
Yay!
Yeah. He basically he is just digging into this dude for not having the last half of his tail. Like he's useless. He calls him useless because of the injury that he has taken. Like basically saying like, you have lost your tail blade. You're not a true Andalite anymore. Saying shit like that, which I don't condone. I'm just telling you what the book says.
Yep. Weren't the
So right
90s
now,
great?
oh yeah, oh yeah, for sure. But like, I'll just say the book addresses this. It's not
Okay.
like this is not K.A. Applegate being like ableism is okay. This is the character Aximili being ableist.
Got it. Okay.
And I'll get to that. I just don't want to spoil it yet. So they decide that Marco and Axe should track them down, just to make sure that like these two Andalites don't really know how many they are. They're kind of trying to be a bit secretive. So they fly back to the house, and Marco decides to try and get a closer look, but then he gets zapped by a force field that he did not know was there. And Gaff gets on a speaker system that apparently is set up on the house, and basically is like, "Come in and surrender, or I will shoot you." And they are like, "Fair enough." Weird thing to be doing in the suburbs for you to have a speaker system that you're like blasting us out, but it seems to not attract any weird attention. So after some back and forth, they do go in. And Marco notices that Gaff, despite being a rather large adult Andalite, has a bit of a tremble to them.
Okay.
But he doesn't really know what this means. So Gaff then leads them through the house into a hidden room, and they find that Gaff has essentially created an Andalite meadow in this house space.
Okay.
And he Axe has demorphed. Marco is I believe in his human form, and both Gaff and Axe start eating an Andalite herb, and Marco just like kind of just like quietly just like acquires a bee, because he's like, this could potentially be haha, something that will help me get out of this
Yeah.
situation. For as a reminder, Andalites don't have mouths, so they eat with their hooves. They basically absorb nutrients through their hooves. So like Gaff and Axe basically just go over to this like patch of like herbs and just stand on them.
Okay.
And they establish a reluctant amount of trust, and then they basically go, okay, well, we will bring our quote unquote prince to meet you. They relay this to Jake, and Jake is like, all right, I might meet with this guy. He seems a little bit like he could be a liability. He could be, he seems like a little bit of a loose cannon, but maybe this is a good idea. Rachel then kind of hangs back and goes, "Ayo, Marco, I don't think you're about to let Jake wander into this mostly uninformed." And Marco goes, "Very astute, Rachel. You are correct. I will not do that." So it's a rare Rachel Marco spy team up moment. So they go back to Gaff's house, unbeknownst to them that Rachel and Marco are following. Marco does morph a bee and almost gets eaten by another bug on his way in, but Rachel in her eagle morph manages to rescue him. The second try goes better, and Marco does get in. He does not, however, find Myrtle, the injured Andalite, anywhere. At this point, Jake is now aware of what's going on and is like scolding Marco and Rachel, and also is trying to figure out like what Gaff's end game is. Axe suddenly has a realization and goes, "Oh, I realize what the herb what we were enjoying is. It is an Andalite painkiller." And he looks at Gaff shaking. He guesses that that Gaff has this horrible disease called Sula's disease. It is spelled Soola. Not that you need to look it up. You're probably not going to find it in a WebMD, but I don't fucking know. I'm not a doctor. Axe informs the team that this disease creates horrendous pain and is fatal. He will die from it. And so they think that Gaff is trying to meet Jake, thinking he's an adult Andalite who Gaff could acquire to thus escape the disease. Although Axe points out that in Andalite culture, this is a very shameful thing to do. The next day, Jake fully goes in to meet with Gaff. And Gaff gets very frustrated very quickly that Jake refuses to quote unquote demorph to his Andalite form. He pulls a shredder on him and tries to force him to demorph. The other Animorphs who are all around basically are just like, yeah, that's not happening. And they barge in their battle morph. And Gaff realizes that they are all human minus Axe. So he knows what's going on, which, you know, could be bad because he seems, the fact that he's pulled this weapon on Jake, like he could spread that information. Or if he were to get acquired, then, or get, basically, if he falls into the hands of the Yeerks, then they're screwed because that's another person who knows their secret. He comes clean with what's going on. He says he doesn't actually want to acquire Jake. He agrees with Axe that is a shameful way out of his illness. Instead, he basically says that the Yeerks have captured Myrtil, the injured Andalite, and are willing to exchange him for a healthy Andalite. The Yeerks don't want Myrtil because he is morph incapable, and they don't want Gaff because Gaff has got this horrible disease and is going to die. So this is where you realize that, like, I don't know if it is implied. It feels like it's a little bit implied that, like, Myrtil is morph incapable because of the injury to his tail, or what? But they basically are saying, like, not only is he missing part of his tail, but he can't do like the major other thing that Andalites are known for, which is morphing. So Axe at this point is like incredulous. He basically is just like, why would you want to trade a healthy Andalite for what he calls a VCOL, VECOL, or an Andalite who can't morph? And Gaff very quickly is like, he would do anything for his friend, regardless of if he's a VCOL or not. So the Animorphs, Axe, and Gaff begin to create a plan to rescue Myrtil. Gaff knows that the Yeerks are essentially moving Myrtil daily, and he's very well guarded. Like, this is like a full-on like hostage situation. Axe once again protests. He's like, a VCOL isn't risking our lives over. And Marco tears into Axe. He's like, yo, shut the fuck up, bro. You're being really, like, he doesn't say it this way, obviously, because it's a book in the 90s, but he's like, you're being really shitty. Like, you're being really ableist. Like, what are you doing? And then Jake says it does not matter what Axe thinks, and they're moving forward with the rescue plan.
Damn.
Jake hits him with the Dwayne Johnson. It doesn't matter what you think. Marco realizes that he shares a unique trait with Gaff, and that they would probably do terrible things in order to reach the goal of saving their friends. So this really leaves the Animorphs in not a great spot because they have to trust Gaff, but like, he could very easily say, I will give you these people in exchange for my friend. Like, I will give you these Andalite bandits, with air quotes, if it means my friend can go free, which sucks, honestly.
Yep.
But they do manage to locate Myrtil in his current holding place, which is an old train yard. They start out with a surprise attack, but they are very, very quickly outnumbered. Like, a huge fight breaks out. The team gets divided. It seems like they're starting to lose these battles. The Yeerks attempt to basically just try and like re-kidnap Myrtil by like stuffing him in a U-Haul, but Marco morphs gorilla and Rachel's an elephant. And they go, no, thank you. This is not happening. This isn't going down.
Yes.
They do. Gaff ends up showing up also, and he helps rescue Myrtil. Axe once again fucking goes off about this guy Myrtil, and Tobias has to step in, and he calls Axe out in his inability to look past quote unquote normal. And this makes Axe cave, and he reluctantly greets Myrtle and says that he will always remember the hero he was, which like is kind of shitty progress, but it's progress.
Yeah.
They escape, and Gaff says, "Hey, can we have some space?" And Gaff basically reiterates that he's dying and says that he would like to be left alone with his friend during that time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it is implied then that a few days later, Myrtle is in the greenhouse at Cassie's place. Um, and he lets Myrtle know that once Gaff passes, he would be willing to visit, him not wanting him to be alone. And after a long silence, Myrtle thanks Marco, and that is the end of the book. So it really kind of shows how interesting perspectives can be, because like generally I feel like humans are and also are portrayed in literature as very non-empathetic, almost willing to be like the kind of creatures that would say such things about people. And so it's very interesting that the
Mm-hmm.
humans in this story have to like turn to the alien and be like, you're being really shitty towards a member of your own race. That's fucking weird, bro. Like that
Mm-hmm.
behavior sucks.
Mm-hmm.
um so that is something to note. Cassie doesn't really have a whole lot in this book. You'll notice I didn't really say her name a lot.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
She really just like the one thing, major thing that she does that stands out is just like she thinks that Gaff is a really good person because he's taking care of Myrtle, but reading into the book, you realize that like no one knows where Myrtle is. So like, how good of care is he really taking of him? You know, like he got kidnapped.
Mm-hmm.
So like, how good is he really doing?
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of implied that this book may not have been written by Ka, and is fact being written by one, possibly by one of the ghostwriters.
Mm-hmm.
This book also does point out again that like Axe is being very ableist, but like you know, I feel like the author is utilizing it in a way to be like, hey, this is behavior not to emulate, and you should not be this shitty
Mm-hmm.
about people.
Right.
So I was very relieved when I was like, okay, this is not K.A. Applegate going off the deep end. This is like a lesson to be
Mm-hmm.
learned.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, as a person who is not disabled currently, I won't, I refuse to speak about that, but I did, like I said, I felt like it was treated as a lesson of like what not to be and what not to do. But if there are
Mm-hmm.
people out there that thought that the portrayal was in poor taste, then that is their opinion, and I totally hold space for that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a pretty good book. So I mean, it wasn't one where I felt like, all right, I like Animorphs, but this book sucks. You know, like it
Mm-hmm.
didn't feel like that. Which
Mm-hmm.
leads me into number 41, The Familiar.
Okay.
Any thoughts before I launch into that? Anything that you wanted to say
Mm,
or?
yeah, I mean, I think that like again, I don't want to speak for um a I don't want to speak for other people.
Mm-hmm,
And no, nothing is a monolith. So
mm-hmm,
but I do think that like in general, like there are that is like maybe a more acceptable way of talking about some of those things is that like
mm-hmm,
showing a character that is shitty or has bad beliefs or ideas or preconceived notions about something or a group or
mm-hmm,
whatever, um and showing how that is not not cool. And I mean, I think especially in children's literature and content, like a lot of it has quote unquote lessons in it, right? So
mm-hmm.
um Yeah, and I do think it is really interesting when the person being shitty is somebody that isn't shitty about everything.
Yeah.
Because that's real, right? And that, like, just because someone's shitty doesn't mean they can't learn to not be shitty. That doesn't mean that you should engage with everybody all the time and try to convince everybody that they're shitty, but it just, like, I do think it is a good example of, like, you know, sometimes shittiness is ignorance, and
For sure, yeah.
or is not having a perspective that you can share or whatever it is. So yeah, so I do think that is an interesting way to go about it as somebody who is not disabled in a way like that of any kind. I don't want to say that this book this book is totally fine and everybody should like it or whatever. Like, yeah, if you find it too hard to read or you find it offensive, that's perfectly fine and that's great. So, yeah, I think, but yeah, I think it's super interesting. I mean, this is what I remember from going through these books is that, like, they have a lot of very serious topics throughout them, setting aside just the fact that, like, fucking middle schoolers, teenage, and then high schoolers, like, are fighting a fucking alien war. Like, it's always a teenager who's, like, saving the world. Which is just like, what? But yeah, that there's, like, a lot of serious topics through these books, and that's real, and, like, they can seem fun on the outside but have a lot of heavier things on the inside. And I think that's one thing that is super interesting about them. So,
all right, so this is book 41, and this is the reason why this is going to be hard. So I'm going to give you a little bit more than I did on the last book. So the cover quote on this one is, "They're out of sight, you're out of mind." This is Jake morphing into what I can only assume is a completely different human being that looks very similar to him.
oh, okay.
See, he is not morphing into an animal, he is morphing into another person.
Okay.
According to Seropedia, which is the Animorphs wiki, this is the last book that features Jake's original cover model. They basically used, like, I won't say stock imagery, but they, like, had photos of a particular boy, and this is the last one in which they use him. And I guess I will say less about that part of the book. So I'll get into it. This book opens in medias res of a particularly violent battle. The battle very quickly gets out of hand and not in the Animorphs' favor at all. Jake orders a desperate retreat, basically leaving Marco and Rachel to fend for themselves.
Oh, shit.
They all escape, but barely. Tensions are very, very high, and Cassie crashes out, she's questioning the violence and the killing that's coming with it, and Jake doesn't have sympathy for her, if any, about this.
Interesting. Okay.
Jake is exhausted and returns home, and I don't know if this is a thing that, like, I'll stop that sentence. I'll just say Tom seems suspicious.
Okay.
And as a reminder, or if you're new to this, Tom is Jake's older brother, and Tom is a confirmed controller. We know 100%
Okay.
that there is a Yerk in his head.
Okay. That's what I thought, but then
Mm-hmm.
then I wasn't sure.
Yep.
Okay.
If you're not wearing a seatbelt, you might want to put one on. Jake falls asleep, and when he wakes up, he is not in his bed. He is somewhere else. He is in New York City, and he says that he does not look like he is 15, and this is the first time that and the age is revealed, or at least at this point the age is revealed,
Mm-hmm.
thus telling
It's
us
been
that
a
some time
while.
has eclipsed. Yes, because he
Yeah.
was in middle school in the invasion, which is book 1.
Mm-hmm.
He says that he looks 10 years older and cites that he must be 25, which is how we know.
Like he sees himself in a
So,
mirror or something and says that?
yeah, basically
Okay.
is how it
Okay.
kind of shakes out. He goes out, and everyone basically he realizes that he's in New York City in Earth on Earth, and everything has been completely taken over by the Yerks. They have lost the war. The war is over.
Okay.
Everyone that he sees assumes him to be a controller with a specifically named Yerk, ESAC 241275. He follows the crowd to what he can only assume is his new job or his current job, but he
Mm-hmm.
skips his stop so that he can investigate. He doesn't know how he got there, but he suspects that it's some sort of parallel timeline created by
Mm-hmm.
the Elemist or Krayak, which, as a reminder, the Elemist is the more benevolent, the Krayak figure is the more, I'll say for lack of better words, demonic. Like, kind of like entities that are overwatching this war, but like only kind of
Mm-hmm.
interfere and never really when it's like
Mm-hmm.
truly beneficial. Like the only thing that like the Elemist has done that like is of note really, as far as like casual listeners are concerned, is the Elemist is the reason that Tobias got a second shot at morphing. Like,
Oh, okay. Yeah,
yeah,
I sort of remember this. Yeah.
yeah. Um, so Jake discovers that there is a quote unquote terrorist organization called the Evolutionist Front. And I put the quotes in there for a reason, which is composed of Yerks and their hosts who believe that the forms of biological evolution and mutation should be explored instead of the enslavement of a sentient species. So they're essentially a splinter group, basically being like, hey, instead of enslaving humans, we should like collaborate and like see it as kind of like a more less of a parasitic relationship, if you
Mm-hmm.
will. Jake encounters Cassie, who is a controller
Mm-hmm.
at this point and is one of the leaders of the EF. And the book basic and slash Jake describes her as, again, strap in, a brutal and calculating terrorist who will use any tactics to sabotage the Yerk Empire. She basically persuades Jake into helping her foil a plot to turn the Earth's moon into a Kandrona sun, which basically means that like the Yerks will have a much easier time living on Earth. Um,
Mm-hmm.
uh, let's see what else of my notes say. And she says like a contact will be in touch later. Um, all of a sudden Jake realizes that like the normal laws of time and space don't seem to match up with wherever he is, because he does
Mm-hmm.
go to his place of work, but as he gets there, he has a flash where everyone around him it becomes zombified versions of the controllers that he has killed. And
that's okay.
Yeah, and to make things even worse, your favorite Animorph, David, is here
No!
in his rat form. He does not say anything. He just scurries around, but like Jake sees and recognizes that this is David.
Son of a bitch.
His dad, Jake's dad, shows up, who is a controller, and Jake basically goes, "Nope, don't like this." He morphs into Tiger, and everyone is like, "Wait a minute, how come that human can morph? That's weird." And he immediately gets knocked out for his efforts. So he morphs Tiger to start either crashing out or doing damage, and he gets knocked out. He is then taken. He is taken to a spot where he is told that he is going to be confronted by Visser 2. And Visser 2 walks into the room, and it is Marco.
Oh, son of a bitch.
But in their conversation,
what is going on?
In their conversation, Marco says that he is Visser 3, and when Jake points out the inconsistency, he just smiles mysteriously. He says that he has captured Cassie, and before he releases Jake, he says now that he knows that they're part of the Yeerk resistance, basically he's going to kill Cassie if Jake does not help him basically take down the EF. Jake goes into the cafeteria of this place that he works at, because he's back there now, I guess. And he finds out that his contact at the EF is a mutilated version of Rachel. She has lost both of her legs, one of her arms, one of her eyes, and her vocal cords have been damaged by war.
Fuck.
But Jake goes back to something that he remembers when he was talking to Cassie, which I did not mention. Cassie very explicitly says that Rachel is dead.
Okay. So it's like, who the fuck is this?
So,
or do they think she's dead, or what?
She basically says, like, hey, I know that, like, I seemed like the end game, but I'm not the end game. You have more instructions, and you're going to meet the head of the resistance, and it's someone that you'll recognize him when you see him, is what Rachel says.
Okay.
He gets chased by these creatures called Orphs at some point. He falls to a trapdoor in the street, and he finds a shelter where freed humans and Andalites are raising children. And one of them says that floor doesn't just open for anyone, and that Cassie must want him to learn something. He talks to a couple of the kids for a bit, and then he makes his way back to the surface through a tree. Then he meets the head of the resistance, and it's an Andalite, a fully grown Andalite. And he goes, "Oh shit, this is Elfangor, the Andalite that gave us the ability to morph."
Oh.
And he is immediately corrected. This is Tobias, who is in his axe morph.
The fuck?
Yes. Tobias explains that he stayed in morph as axe, and that he explains to Jake that his brother Tom killed him when he slept 10 years ago.
Fuck. What?
And then he says, "Hey, Jake, we need your help foiling this plan to convert the moon into a Kandrona ray emitting sun." And then Jake says that this will mean either certain death this will mean certain death for Cassie, because again, Marco has threatened Cassie with death if Jake does not help. And Tobias responds that sacrifices must be made in war. So Jake goes to the Chrysler Building, because it was called the Chrysler Building at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And he is in a situation where he has to choose between saving Cassie or aborting the moon mission. And he makes a choice. He wakes up in his room to a voice that is specifically mentioned to not be either the Elemist or Krayak, saying that he made an interesting choice and the humans will require more study. Wait a minute, Sherrick, you didn't say what choice he made. You're right, I didn't, because the book does not tell you.
Yep.
Shaken, Jake then calls Cassie on the phone because he is back in his room as a 15-year-old and not in this fucking crazy world that he ended up living in, and asks if she's all right. And he said that he should have asked her the night before, which was after the battle that happened. And that is the end of the book.
Son of a bitch. So they fucking, like, made him a fucking psychological study? I hate this.
Mm-hmm. Some trivia for you. If one counts Jake's experiencing another reality set in the future as time traveling, this would be Jake's 6th time traveling through time and his 2nd time visiting the future.
I mean, it feels like, yes, it is future because he's older. However, it's hard to say if this is even a future that could be, let alone a future that will be.
Mm-hmm.
And could also be in a different universe. So it feels like he technically time traveled, but may have also time and space traveled. And then we're getting into multiverse shit. So I'm just this is just fucking complicated. But yes, I get it.
I just sent you the images of the inside cover of the book, which to note, if you don't know, every Animorphs main series book has a cutout for the in the cover, so that way the inside cover can see you can see the face of the inside cover from the outside, and then you open it up and it shows like a scene of some sort. So I sent you the image.
So it's morph instead of it him morphing to animal, it's him morphing to 25-year-old other universe version or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Future version, fucked up version, whatever.
Right.
That's fascinating.
Mm-hmm. It's very like, I feel like Total Recall, like Sixth Sense, like, or the Fifth Element, excuse me, like.
Oh, okay.
Kind of feeling in terms of just like a futuristic world, but like other trivia for you, and you'll love this one. This will be your favorite trivia about this book.
Oh no.
The nature or identity of the entity responsible for this simulation, as the wiki is calling it, remains unknown because they never mention who this is ever again.
I'm having a reaction that's really bad for a podcast medium, but
mm-hmm.
Okay. There are two things about this ending that you don't get resolution on. Well, yeah, we'll just say 2.
Mm-hmm.
One is that, like, who did this? Why? How? Like, to me, that's all together, kind of. So, like, there's that. And then there's the question of what did he pick?
Mm-hmm.
Like, which choice did he pick?
Right.
And it actually doesn't really bother me that we don't know which choice he picked.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's an interesting philosophical question. I mean, it's kind of the trolley problem.
Yep.
Do you run over the one person that you know and love, or do you run over the group of 10 people that you don't know at all?
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're not familiar with the trolley problem, that's kind of it. Anyway, so I'm not, so it's like, it is an interesting philosophical question, and to think, because it's like, that response from whoever did this of like, they need to study more because of your choice, I feel like is like would be a good answer either way, because it's like, to me there's not necessarily a right answer in terms of like I can't decide what the right answer is for you on a question like that. So to me it's like, either way, knowing someone's answer to that question could give you a lot of insight about them. And could lead, like I said, like this leads to a lot of discussion. So it doesn't really bother me that we don't know what he picked. But it is interesting in this particular book series. Like, that feels like more of an adult fiction book.
Yeah.
Dystopian fiction book, or like yeah, that, again, like I said earlier, there's like a lot of serious themes in these books that kind of take them from just being like seemingly some simple trade paperbacks for kids.
Right. There's more to tell you, just so you know. Just not. I don't want to stop your trains of thought. There's more to tell you.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, you're okay. I just wanted to make sure.
Just the fact that we never find out again who did this, why, whatever. Like, that part is weird. Like, that feels like a loose end. Whereas the other thing feels like a choice, like a narrative choice. Okay.
Okay. So, the things that I need to tell you is that this book is very unique in the sense that because it takes place in New York City and it was written before 2001, I'll just leave that there. So there's a content warning placed in the audiobook version of this after the warning against unauthorized copywriting, basically letting people know that this was published before the 9/11 attacks in the United States, because in this futuristic version, and this is very interesting because obviously there's no way for the ghostwriter, because it's more or less confirmed that a ghostwriter followed an outline based on K.A. Applegate here. There was no way for the ghostwriter to know this, but they wrote that most of the skyscrapers in New York were toppled except for the Twin Towers. For some reason, the Twin Towers still stood. Another thing to note is that, and I left this out of the general kind of synopsis that I gave you, when Jake encounters Rachel, and I'm sure some people who are like have been paying attention probably asked this question. He remarks that Rachel is maimed, but says why. Basically, is like, why can't you morph? Because that would heal all of those injuries if she morphed and
Mm.
morphed back.
Mm-hmm.
But then he discovers that he also, for some reason, cannot morph. But then you go, but Sherrick, you said right after this he morphs into Tiger. Yeah, he does, and he's confused, and then he can't morph again after he demorphs from Tiger, and he goes, "What the fuck?" And that leads into what some people, including this particular Wikipedia article that I'm pulling the trivia from, to
Mm-hmm.
believe that what actually happened is that this was a dream simulation that was run in Jake's mind.
I was gonna say, like, at one point when you were talking about it, I was like, is this a dream? But not just a dream. Like
Mm-hmm.
a dream made real somehow. A
Mm-hmm.
real dream somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Hmm.
So going back to the mysterious smile that I mentioned, another thing that I did not mention that happens in the book is that there are specific times in which Jake will look up to see what he calls an elderly red-tailed hawk. So he
Okay.
is very surprised when he runs into Tobias, who
Yeah.
basically has become a Nothlit again, but as an Andalite this time. And it
Right.
is kind of like implied that Axe basically is a controller and went to the Andalite homeworld to help conquer it for the Yerks. Um, but
Okay.
basically, part of the thing that supports that whole simulation theory is that
Mm-hmm.
he notices this, he sees this red-tailed hawk that like appears and disappears. The weather changes abruptly. His morphing ability is inconsistent, and again, that mysterious smile Marco gives when he is referred to as both Visor 2 and 3. uh so a lot of people, especially on the Animorphs subreddit, which the subtitle is "Idiot Teenagers with a Death Wish," and I think that's so funny. um
But like,
that
but I could think of a lot of things that would apply to, and
Sure, yeah, for sure.
in some ways, more apt. Like, it just like I don't feel like, because these kids didn't ask for this, saying
Hmm.
that they have a death wish feels weird. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yep.
Sounds
Now.
like, teens that like take crazy chances in a
Hmm.
just to take crazy chances or something.
Right. Now, I will say,
But yes, it's still funny.
I will say that I think that despite this plot being kind of, and the reason that it's difficult is because it's just like, it feels like a very like, what if like Jake finally snaps and all of this shit happens? Like, the characterization of these characters is emphasized enough that you go, wait a second, Cassie is like the most fun loving, like, well, not fun loving, the most like peaceful, animal loving like character there
Mm-hmm.
that has probably ever been written. So to
Mm-hmm.
see her as this like cold, callous, like basically warrior bitch is like very Rachel territory and weird. And to see Rachel as kind of like this person who just exists kind of as like this weapon that has been used to the point of it being a husk
Mm-hmm.
is like is in line with the character trajectory that you think it would go on should the war break bad. But it's also kind
Mm-hmm.
of like not, it feels like very much not the way Rachel would want to go out, that it's heartbreaking. And to see
Mm-hmm.
Tobias as like this person who was like probably the most heartbreaking character in the series,
Mm-hmm.
uh acting in this way of being like, I don't really care if I have to like sacrifice this person who used to be my friend for the good of everyone,
Yeah.
is very interesting, considering like how Marco and Marco is like only in the book for like really that one section where he's both Visor 2 and
Mm-hmm.
3, and then he's never mentioned again really.
Mm-hmm.
to think about how they were like, no, we would sacrifice the world for our friends, you know, kind of that kind of behavior, then to flip into this book where it's like they are characterized as these people who would sacrifice their friends easily for the world is very interesting to me.
It is very interesting. I will say that, like, this plot follows the "It's a Wonderful Life" trope in a way.
Yeah, I hear you.
Meaning that, like, and I don't know that TV shows are doing that as much anymore, but there was a period of time, particularly in the 90s and early 2000s, where it seemed like every TV show had an "It's a Wonderful Life" episode where, like, I'm you're going to be unconscious somehow and have a dream and be shown what life would be like if you died, didn't exist, made a different choice, you know, etc., etc. And that oftentimes in those episodes, the way characters act and become is very different from how they were before. Now, if you're good at writing this trope, you're going to be able to kind of see how they got there from this inciting incident. That knowing the character that you normally know, and knowing that if they had never met the main character person who's having this dream, that it would make sense. I would have to read the book to know if this is done even a little bit well in that sense of understanding. But I mean, I guess I could kind of see that, like, if they lost the war and everything got fucked, that, like, I think it can be pretty easy to flip and say fuck it.
Right.
So, that when everything feels hopeless, sometimes it seems like the easiest thing to do is just give up. So, or do what you quote unquote have to do to survive. And in that case, it may be sacrificing your friends in this world. So that is interesting to me. And it is a hard topic.
Very. Yeah.
And yeah, again, interesting that this is like a book for teens.
Yeah. This is a
even
series
more so
that I
than
definitely
normal.
read as a kid. Yeah.
Right. And like I said, I've said that before in this episode. I've said it in other episodes. You've said it, that like there are some very mature themes in these books. But this is, I feel like this is beyond even that normal level.
Right. This is the 6th and 7th time that an Animorph is depicted as a controller in the series. Jake in The Capture, alternate Rachel in The Stranger, Cassie in The Departure, Axe in The Sickness, and Tobias in a book called Back to Before, which I don't believe we've talked about. Okay. It's a Megamorphs book, which I believe we have skipped generally.
Yeah, so I think we've talked about one or two of those, but not many.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I will. That is more or less all the information that I was going to give you about that. So, if you have more to say, feel free to say it here.
I don't.
I didn't cut you off earlier.
Okay. No. I think that I'm just. I think that this this one feels very interesting to me, fascinating to me, and that there is and leads to more conversation, at least for me.
There actually is one more thing, real quick, I wanted to point out, because I was reminded in the bit where I was like, I'm gonna fucking bring up Rat David because I knew that you would hate that. I feel like David being in this situation where Jake is seeing all of these like people that he has killed, including like I think like the fucking howlers or whatever are there too. Like David being there and yet not being like not zombified, just a rat walking around is a very interesting detail to have appear in this sense. Because if you don't remember what the Animorphs did to David, they forced him to be a Nothlit, which basically means that he is stuck as a rat until there is some sort of like Elemist or Krayak like intervention, which may or may not happen. But like, it's kind of like saying like this is not the worst thing that you've done is kill all these people. Potentially, like there are potentially worse things that you have done.
Yeah. So like there's just there's so much in this book that just feels like ripe for conversation, but but no conclusions or answers, really. So, which is sometimes my favorite kind of conversation.
Yeah. I went to go and look and see how the library ladies felt about this book rereading it. And for what it's worth, they keep a scorecard of the quote unquote score between the Animorphs and the Yeerks. And sometimes they give both a point, sometimes they only give one a point, sometimes they give neither a point.
Okay.
They scored this book for the Yeerks.
Yeah.
And I thought that was very interesting.
I think I would too.
Because like
I mean,
they won the war, but it didn't really happen. So like, you know, like
right. But I mean, we're supposed to believe that Jake wakes up and remembers this. Right? So I think even events that never actually happen can haunt people and change the way they think about things or make decisions going forward. So I don't necessarily think that means that Jake came out of this world and that will then his decisions after this point will help the Yeerks win. I don't think that. I mean, I think it's more of a Christmas Carol type situation where it's like warning.
Yeah.
This is what the future could be if you stay on this path or whatever.
Right.
But I don't think it's not quite that either, but you know, but I think that it just I can see that like for the majority of the book it feels like the Yeerks have won everything. Like
yeah, the Animorphs have definitely scored a victory here and there, but like for reference, with the way that the library ladies have scored this at this point in time, with the book that we just talked about, the Yeerks 11, the Animorphs 15.
Okay, and
so
that
the
like,
Animorphs
that
are
makes
ahead.
sense to me. And like again, that makes sense to me because I think that in a book series like this, in most book series like this, even for adults, the quote unquote good guys are still most likely going to win out in the end. again, that's not always true, but yeah, but it's also like if they always win all the time, that's fucking boring and there are no
Right.
stakes.
Mm-hmm.
So it does make sense to me that it should stay somewhat like even-ish. But just for this particular book, it could feel like, especially because it's set in a future.
Mm-hmm.
Jake thinks it's the future. That for the period of time in this book, he's living this life as though the Yeerks have not only won the latest battle, but they've won it all.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think even if that isn't really part of the whole story, the whole war, it still like puts you in that world where it feels like it. And so I feel like I would come to the end of the book and be like, yeah, man, the Yeerks fucking took this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Because that, I mean, that's an emotional toll that Jake has to live with now.
Yep.
Is regardless of it being real or not, he saw what like a future where his like. So something to note is that when Jake comes home from this battle, that beforehand that makes Tom suspicious. He's wearing his morphing suit, and small goof here. I believe he says the Hork-Bajir blood that he has on him is purple and blue, but in the past
Mm,
they've established that it's red and green, which like doesn't make that's not
mm,
going to make Tom suspicious. But the point is that he's got blood on him, so like any
mm-hmm.
brother I think would be suspicious if he sees his sibling come home late dressed in like weird attire that looks like it has blood on it, and knowing that
Right.
like as a controller Tom probably knows what Hork-Bajir blood looks like. That's sus, like.
Right.
So but then we also truly don't know like if that part is like how much of his home part is actually real, because like
Mm-hmm.
on one hand it says like he was killed, and then but like is Tom actually sus? Was that part of the simulation? Or how much trouble are they really in? We don't know yet, because
Yeah.
book 42 hasn't happened. So
Mm-hmm.
at this point, I mean, obviously it's out there now, you can read it if you want, but um a lot of speculation can be placed. So just as a heads up for anybody that was wondering when that book was released, it was April of 2000. So again, a full year and change before September 11th happened. So again, no way that the ghostwriter knew what was gonna come. So very very interesting, just
Mm-hmm.
interesting
It's
choice, I think.
it's interesting how those kinds of like things happen, because it's not like
Yes.
that's the only time that's ever happened.
No, sure,
Like,
but I just thought it
you
was like
know,
you chose out of a dystopian New
oh
York
yeah,
City
no, it
at the
it's
only
creepy
thing
as fuck.
standing. Yeah.
It's creepy as
Mhm.
fuck in hindsight. It's just so interesting how often like things in pop culture or whatever
Mhm.
predict or foreshadow, or like in this case it's neither of those, but also but it's just a weird irony, maybe, I don't know.
Mhm.
um yeah, it's just super interesting when that happens,
Yeah.
because it's like, does it mean something? And most likely it doesn't. But
Mhm.
um it also is sometimes just being really really good at seeing the flow of time and patterns.
Yes,
But
I agree.
in this case, yeah, I don't know.
All right. Well, we will leave the Animorphs talk there, except for I'm going to give you a inconsistency from book number 42 to look forward to.
Okay.
This is Animorphs number 42, The Journey. The
Hmm.
inconsistency is, and I'm totally giving it to you without out of context here, so you have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
The inconsistency is Dunkin' Donuts did not have any locations in the Western United States, specifically in California, where the series takes place, until 2014. The series at this point is taking place in 1999. Did you know that there were no Dunkin' Donuts in the Western United States until like the mid 2010s? Because I didn't.
Okay. I didn't know that specifically, but that stat does not surprise me. Because until probably around that time, I had never seen a Dunkin' Donuts outside of the Eastern United States.
Fair.
Except
totally
for
fair.
like one random Dunkin' Donuts in the middle of Wisconsin.
Love it. Love it.
That I would go out of my way to go to after having it in New York City. Now I want a donut. Okay, anyway.
Just as a heads up for those of you who are listening, the countdown is on unofficially. We are 12 books away from the end.
Yeah, I was going to say we're getting very close.
That is not including, of course, the Megamorphs or the Chronicles or the Alternomorphs books, which like those are the Alternomorphs books, if I remember correctly. Those are the ones in which you basically get to be an Animorph.
Mm-hmm.
They're choose your own adventure Animorphs books.
Gotcha.
And then, of course, there are graphic novels, which at this point we are up to number 6, which is the Capture. So that is the one in which Jake is captured. So yeah, I didn't make up a theme song for it, but this is Amelia. What the fuck is this? This is part of the voicemail podcast disguised as a voicemail where I find something wild and crazy kids on the internet for Amelia without context. It's a rare one. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, no sound. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Oh my god. Oh my god. It's just like a little video clip. Basically a GIF. Of a dude running through like an office building, maybe? It almost looks like a mall, but it's not. I'm pretty sure it's not. Anyway, and he's, at least from this clip, I don't know if it's been sped up, but at least from the clip, it feels like he runs very fast. And then just runs right through a plate glass window. as the automatic door opens over the spot that he just ran through. It just keeps looping, and it's so funny.
And it fully, not only does it take him out, because it seems like he gets knocked out by the impact, but then it like wraps him up like a fucking glass burrito. Like,
yeah,
so it's like,
I know. It's like some part of it like falls on top of him.
It doesn't shatter.
Really funny.
It doesn't shatter. It like it's like that. It's not like bulletproof glass, but it's like that glass that is like plastic pressed in between it, because it just like wraps around him as the spot where he should have ran opens up.
Yeah. It's fucking so funny. And like the way that he's running and stuff, it's like, did he steal something, or like, you know, I don't know. But that's just how it feels. And so if that's the case, then like I don't really feel that bad that he ran through them like that. But no. Otherwise, I hope that guy's okay. Oh my god, it's so funny.
So
I gotta shut it. There we go.
I want you to know that has been playing on loop the entire episode on my side of things.
I wouldn't be able to do anything. I would just watch it. Oh,
so yeah. So Amelia, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me at Shake Meets World or at Fuck the Perfect Life, mostly on Instagram. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So
Awesome. You could find me at Ablacksparrow most places, including at ablacksparrow.com, which just redirects you to SherrickRobinson.com. That's cool and great. You can also find me, at least for the foreseeable future, on twitch.tv/Vault Companions. Every Sunday evening, we are playing a Bioshock game, which is utilizing the kids on bikes mechanic that is familiar to those of you who watch Dimension 20. Potentially that it is homebrewed a little bit, so it's basically it's set in an alternate reality. For those of you who don't know what Bioshock is, it's set in an alternate reality 1958/1959 where a billionaire has elected to build a city at the bottom of the ocean off the coast of the Atlantic called Rapture, because he doesn't like the way things that the United States is running things. So he builds a utopian city called Rapture at the bottom of the ocean, and wouldn't you know it, doesn't quite last. So not for the reasons you may think, but yeah. So you don't necessarily. I feel like you don't necessarily have to.
I saw BioShock on your schedule and just assumed it was a video game.
Nope, it is a TTRPG.
So cool.
So yeah, so the first episode I think is up on their Twitch channel still. I don't know when it'll be up on a potential YouTube channel, so feel free to catch up. It's not very long, a couple hours for those of you who watch APs. So
gotcha.
Good time. And then we go live, I believe, 6 p.m. Central on Sundays. So
awesome.
There's that. All right. Well, I feel like we probably hit the limit on your voicemail.
Yeah, so sorry if we talked too long.
We absolutely talked too long, and we'll absolutely next time talk too long about how we try to do our best to look sexy despite actually wearing 7 layers of clothing. Bye!